For good.
The world's preeminent undead funk ambassadors are rising from the tomb. Here comes the Mummies, an 8-piece funk rock band of 5,000-year-old Egyptian mummies with only one thing on their mind, bringing you terrifying funk from beyond the grave. It's funky, it's freaky, and it's absolutely unforgettable. Catch them September 21st at the historic Pantages Theater in downtown Minneapolis. Shake it, quake it, and get your tickets now at hennepinarts.org before the mummies vanish. Again, that's hennepinarts.org.
Greg Bakun here. I love historic tours of Minneapolis and seeing everything it has to offer. But if you know me, I like to include a little spooky in my tours, which is why I found the perfect combination. Minneapolis Trolley Tours does this amazing candlelight ghost tour that you have to check out. It's an extremely immersive experience. It's a trolley trip that starts out at a haunted mansion, traveling around Minneapolis locations, exposing ghost stories that the public and business owners would rather left untold. Then a tour of the aforementioned haunted mansion where ghosts of past residents from the 1800s reside, plus a lot of surprises to discover. Next, experience Gertrude's After Hours. Did I mention Gertrude is the mansion's most famous ghost? Maybe she'll show up. And you finish up the tour at Gertrude's Lounge in the haunted basement of the mansion with refreshments and Q&A. The trolleys are climate controlled and the mansion is restored to perfection. Check out MinneapolisTrolleyTours.com for more information.
With your AM 950 weather, I'm Patrick Lilia. Clear tonight with a low of 57, then Thursday sunshine with a high of 77. For more than 40 years, the Great Wall Restaurant has been serving up Szechuan and Mandarin favorites. The Great Wall is located just north of 50th in France on the Minneapolis-Edina City line. Check them out at greatwallrestaurant.us. Portions of the following program may be pre-recorded.
The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host, guest, random reptoid, or chupacabra may not necessarily reflect those of AM 950 Radio, its affiliates, or its sponsors. Now, it's time to step into the unknown. There are things people experience but never talk about. A shadow moving in the corner, flickering of the lights, a disembodied voice. We invite you to talk with us. Share your story, share your experience, because this isn't just your story, this is our story. This is GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun.
And this is GhostBox Radio on AM 950, where every night we talk about the paranormal, ufology, Bigfoot, and so much more. My name is Greg Bakun. Thank you very much for joining us tonight as we are starting, as Patrick said right before the program starts. Last week we were a little cold weather-wise. Now we are heating up, kind of bit like kind of getting into the last throes of summer. Really appreciate you joining us tonight. Tonight's going to be very interesting. I'm not going to lie. There's a lot about Nikola Tesla I do not know. I've done some research and whatnot, and I wanted to talk about him because they're not only about everything that he has invented and created for that we're still using in everyday life, but I want to talk a little bit about some of the kind of the mysteries surrounding his death and some of the work that he's left behind. I want to talk about a lot of different things here, and I've been very fortunate tonight that we're going to have on author Marc J Seifer, and Marc has written the book Wizard: The Life and Times of Nikola Tesla, and this is just one thing that Marc has written. There's so much that he has done, but we're gonna kind of focus on Tesla tonight and about his life, what he's created, kind of everything around him, plus the fact that Marc himself, it seems like, and Marc, correct me if I'm wrong here, I feel like that you've really devoted a lot of your life to Tesla himself in terms of being able to do stuff like this, or you do talks on him, or you do like you had mentioned, and we were talking before the show, doing the TV show The Tesla Files. First of all, folks, let me introduce Marc J Seifer. Thank you, Marc, for joining us tonight. How are you doing?
Great, and thanks so much for having me.
Oh my gosh, this is good. And we actually were supposed to have Mark on back in August, and on our end we had to cancel because we had some technical problems. And I am so grateful that you were able to join us and put this together. Now, where did your enthusiasm for Tesla begin? Because, like I said, you kind of intertwine your career and your life with him a little bit, it seems like.
Well, Tesla now is world known, and a lot of it has to do with Elon Musk and Tesla Motors and also the advent of the internet. But I'm going all the way back to the 1970s. I was teaching courses in parapsychology, and I was writing an article on a Tibetan Lama who turned out not to be a Tibetan Lama. And I went down to New York City to do some research on his life. His name is Lapsang Rampa, and he's written about 14 books, and they're excellent. One book is better than the next, but his first book was called The Third Eye. And you find out in the third book that he's really a British plumber. His name is Cyril Hoskins, and that he wanted to die, and Rampa, the Tibetan, wanted to live. So they swapped souls in the astral plane. Just a very far out story. So I thought it'd be a neat article to write. I was writing for Ancient Astronauts, a magazine I was writing for. And so I go down to New York, and I found a book on avatars, enlightened beings. And one of them was Lapsang Rampa, another was Jesus Christ, and another was a guy by the name of Nikola Tesla. And it said that he was born on the planet Venus. He landed on Earth in 1856 to give us fluorescent lights, the induction motor, the hydroelectric power system, wireless communication, remote control, robotics. And I'm thinking, I thought the Rampa story is pretty crazy, but this is ridiculous. But I was in the library, the New York Public Library, and so I researched his name, and out popped an article on high frequency phenomena that he wrote in the 1890s. So he was a real guy. And when I got back to Rhode Island, my editor, who's also my good friend Howard Smuckler, said, "Oh, Tesla." Here, he gave me a biography written by John O'Neill, who was a Pulitzer Prize winning writer for the Herald Tribune. He wrote it in 1944. And also a book called Tesla and the Venusian Spaceship, that Tesla was still alive circling the Earth on a UFO landing in this guy's backyard up in Canada. So that's how I got introduced to him. The book Prodigal Genius by John O'Neill is a superb book, but there were a lot of gaps in the book. And meanwhile, I purchased a book of his articles and patents. It's 1,000 pages. And it came from the Tesla Museum. And in it are all his patents. And I was in a very far out world of parapsychology, remote control and psychic metal bending and out of body experiences and all that stuff. And so Tesla was kind of just another far out story, but I had patents. So I decided to devote my time to figuring out, was he really the inventor of the induction motor? Was he really invented hydroelectric power system, fluorescent lights, wireless communication, remote control? And when I went into the heart and soul of each of these inventions, I found, to my total surprise, that he really was the inventor of all these things, and that he sold his patents to Westinghouse. And so the Niagara Falls, harnessing all the Northeast, is all Tesla's setup. So at that point, I was working on my doctorate. The subject of my doctoral dissertation is how such an important man, how his name could disappear from the history books. And his Tesla had completely disappeared. In fact, I got that big 1,000-page book from a UFO organization. That's how far out it was. And so that's pretty much how I got into him. And then that book, my doctoral dissertation, was 700 pages long. And that became morphed into Wizard, The Life and Times of Nikola Tesla, which came out in 1996. And I made sure that I had 1,000 endnotes, because there were a lot of people that were opposed to Tesla, a lot of disinformation. And so they all went into, they tried to attack me, and they go into the heart and soul of each of the endnotes, and they find out I was completely right. And it got great reviews, was reviewed in a full-page article in the New York Times. It was MIT's Technology Review, Scientific American called it serious scholarship, and many other places. And it's still, even in July, it was #1 in its subcategory on Kindle on Amazon. So it's still doing incredibly well. But again, I think Elon Musk has something to do with that. But I think I played a big role in bringing his name back, in the 1990s, before the internet really took off.
It's really interesting that you talk about the fact that you're like you in the 70s you didn't know who Tesla was, and that just seems, to your point, really odd, because by the time I was a kid in the 80s 90s, yes, I certainly heard and knew who Tesla was. The question is, though, you mentioned that people were kind of attacking the book and Tesla himself. Why would people be especially even as far as the 90s, be that they would have anything against him?
A lot of it was corporate jealousy. Charles Steinmetz was brilliant. He's a dwarf with a hunchback. You can look at pictures of him from the 1890s. At first, he was on Tesla's side, but once he was hired by General Electric, whoever got to harness Niagara Falls was a huge enterprise.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot. I had probably hundreds, many, scores of lawsuits between General Electric and Westinghouse. And at that time, Westinghouse wanted to promote Tesla's name in the 1890s. So Steinmetz, the very first book I ever got in my research was a book on alternating current, a textbook written by Charles Steinmetz on the AC polyphase system. And Tesla's name, it's 1897. That's pretty early. It's like writing a book on the theory of relativity and somehow forgetting to put Einstein's name in the book.
Yeah.
I mean, so the reason why Steinmetz left his name out was because he was hired by a corporate competitor. And that had a lot to do with it. Also, once he sold his patents to Westinghouse, people knew the Westinghouse motor. They didn't know the Tesla motor anymore. I use as an example, who invented the mouse? I don't know who invented the mouse. I know Stephen Jobs. Who invented contact lenses? I don't know, but I know Bausch and Lomb. So it was that kind of thing. So once he got separated, once he sold the patents, the corporation's name was known. Edison, on the other hand, kept his name associated with his patents, and that's one of the key reasons why we knew Edison's name.
It's something that I think too that I think we don't. I don't, at least, think about, because we're so far removed from it. But there was a fierce competition for electricity, wasn't there? A fierce competition of having a electricity system that could be used everywhere by everybody.
Yes, I mean, Tesla was looking forward to working for Tom Edison. He was the Wizard of Menlo Park. And in 1884, he was actually working for him in Paris in 1883. And he came to New York in 1884. Actually met Edison in Paris in 1883. I discovered that. No one else knew that Edison had even gone to Paris at that time. So he was working for the most famous, guy of the day, the Michael Jordan of the day. I mean, in electricity. And the thing is that electricity, by its nature, changes its direction of flow at thousands of times a second. So I'll take you back to the 1870s. Let's say you have a water wheel and you want to make the water wheel go in one direction and turn it as a water wheel. If the river was flowing downstream, then upstream, then downstream, then upstream at thousands of times a second. So what they did was they eliminated the upstream. They only had the downstream. That's what DC is. But DC was highly inefficient. You could only send electricity about a mile, power dropping off over distance, and only for lighting homes. But by the time Tesla came in 1884 and through the late 1880s, there were 3,000 power plants with three companies: the Edison Company, the Westinghouse Company, and Elihu Thompson's company. They each had about 1,000 power plants just in the Northeast. But they were all only sending electricity 1 mile, power dropping off of a distance, and only for lighting homes. And it was all coal-operated. So you can envision the pollution that must have existed in every single hamlet across the entire Northeast. That's the world that Tesla was in. So if Edison had won, and Edison had the name, and he was backed by J.P. Morgan, all the factories in the Northeast would have lined up along Niagara Falls, and they would have ruined Niagara Falls. That's basically what was at stake, and that was the war of the currents. So Edison started electrocuting cats and dogs, a horse, and even an elephant with Tesla's AC, and scaring the public, saying you'd Westinghouse somebody if you used AC. And then they battled it out in court. And as I said, Steinmetz was on the side of Edison at that time. But because Tesla system was so efficient. Excuse me. You could send electricity with Tesla's system literally hundreds of miles, and not just for lighting homes, but for running factories. So it was really like the difference between a horse and buggy and a rocket ship. And Tesla was the inventor of the rocket ship, and he spoke as the inventor of the hydroelectric power system in 1897. It's very important because even today, there are even biographies today which say that Tesla used illusion, that he really was not the inventor of the hydroelectric power system. So there's still a lot of disinformation out there, but his name's on the patent plaque 9 times, and he spoke as the inventor at Niagara Falls, right after they harnessed Niagara Falls with the hydroelectric power system.
When did AC become part of the norm with our electricity?
Well, what happened was Tesla tried to talk Edison into using AC, but how can you make a current that's changing its direction of flow thousands of times a second? Edison didn't think beyond that. He'd been using DC for 20 years. So he thought Tesla was crazy. And so Tesla left, and he struggled for a year or two, and then he sold the patents to Westinghouse. So the key was the Chicago World's Fair of 1893. Whoever got to light the fair would be a big PR campaign. So Westinghouse literally took $1 million loss. Even in those days, it was $1 million to light the fair, the Chicago Fair, with Tesla's AC system. And he advertised Tesla's name because he wanted to promote Tesla at that time. Edison, though, had the patent on the light bulb, so he wouldn't let Westinghouse use the light bulb. So Westinghouse had to use an old light bulb in order to, it was called the stopper lamp. So Edison was kind of, he stuck it to Westinghouse, even though he lost the right to harness the Chicago Fair. So once the Chicago Fair was lit by the system, that was the proof that AC was very powerful and useful. So in 1893, 1894, Tesla was already making the New York Times, and he was becoming very famous. And so to answer your question, I would say in the mid 1890s is when AC started to become accepted as the natural way to go.
That's interesting. I want to do this. Let's go ahead, take our first break. When we come back, I have more questions, kind of on stuff that we talked about a little bit earlier. I'd like to get a little bit more deeper into some of what people thought of Tesla after he passed and stuff. And some interesting stuff you said. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to GhostBox Radio on AM 950. Greg Bakun here. I've told you about the out-of-the-world roast beef sandwiches at Maverick's Real Roast Beef, but I haven't told you about their Philly steak sandwiches, turkey bacon avocado sandwich, BLT, crispy chicken, fish sandwiches, brisket, or pulled pork. Okay, you get the idea. They make a lot of delicious food to the same standard as their famous roast beef sandwiches, and now I'm starving. I'm going to go to Maverick's Real Roast Beef off Lexington and Roseville, and you need to go too. Check out their menu at mavericksbeef.com. Have you ever met someone who not only can help you on a deep spiritual level, but also potentially change your life? Refined Divine is an extremely gifted psychic medium who travels the nation and lives right here in the Midwest. And she offers mediumship, mentorship, house and business parties, energy healing, palm readings, and so much more. Refined Divine has helped thousands, and she can help you.
Hi, this is Psychic Medium Deb. I cannot wait to hear from you. You can go to refineddivinepsychic.com.
Greg Bakun here. I love historic tours of Minneapolis and seeing everything it has to offer. But if you know me, I like to include a little spooky in my tours, which is why I found the perfect combination. Minneapolis Trolley Tours does this amazing candlelight ghost tour that you have to check out. It's an extremely immersive experience. It's a trolley trip that starts out at a haunted mansion, traveling around Minneapolis locations exposing ghost stories that the public and business owners would rather left untold. Then a tour of the aforementioned haunted mansion where ghosts of past residents from the 1800s reside, plus a lot of surprises to discover. Next, experience Gertrude's After Hours. Did I mention Gertrude is the mansion's most famous ghost? Maybe she'll show up. And you finish up the tour at Gertrude's Lounge in the haunted basement of the mansion with refreshments and Q&A. The trolleys are climate controlled and the mansion is restored to perfection. Check out MinneapolisTrolleyTours.com for more information. And tomorrow is the day. We've been talking about this. Tomorrow over at Divine Lights in Anoka, in the basement, we are doing a paranormal investigation. You are invited to join us, investigate this very haunted location in Anoka, Minnesota. Anoka is known as the Halloween capital of the world. And this place, we've now done 2 of these investigations, once every month. And each time we go, the activity becomes more. And that, I believe, is because we are bringing in our stuff and we're speaking with spirits and that they're getting more used to us. It's a fantastic time. I really recommend, if you want to do this paranormal investigation. I get a lot of people asking me, oh, I'd love to go on an investigation with you. I'd love to experience doing an investigation. Tomorrow is a great opportunity to do so. To join us tomorrow, go to Charvinity, CharVinity on Facebook. Char is putting this on. Go to Charvinity on Facebook. Under events, you can see Anoka Paranormal Investigation and a link to get tickets. And it starts at 6 and goes till 9 tomorrow. It's a lot of fun. I hope to see you there. We're having a great conversation with author Marc J Seifer. We're talking about Wizard, the life and times of Nikola Tesla. We are also just kind of talking in general about Tesla. And, you know, Mark, in the first segment, you talked about when you first came across his name, you ran across stuff that was saying that he was born on Venus and he came to Earth in, 18, whatever, I forget off the top of my head. But I guess my question to you is, was that common after he died, that there's all sorts of weirdness around him as a person after he passed?
Yes, and I even think some of maybe the Superman idea might have been partly inspired by Tesla. All the the mad scientist stories, like in the 1930s. In fact, he even worked on Frankenstein, helping build the equipment that was used in the movie. But in 1899, he went to Colorado Springs to send electricity around the world. He was now in the field of wireless, and he was competing against Marconi. The sad aspect of this is that Tesla's system is the basis of radio and sending voice, pictures, and power. Marconi's system was the basis of sending Morse code. He didn't have the ability to send complex information. Tesla was using continuous wave frequencies that were complex. Marconi was using just dots and dashes, a spark gap. So in 1899, he had his listening equipment, and he, it was early years. They didn't really have cars in those days. So how do you do long distance experiments? So he was tracking thunderstorms along the Rocky Mountains as far as 600 miles away. You can almost see 100 miles up and down. He's right at the edge. He's on a plane right at the edge of the Rocky Mountains. And one night in July, he received 3 pulses on his equipment. And I heard people that have worked on this, the Corman brothers. It sounded a lot like this: beep, beep, beep. So we heard these 3 beeps, and he thought that they came from either Venus or Mars. And then he changed his opinion a little bit and felt that it was more likely came from Mars. In those days, there was a lot of belief in life on Mars. H.G. Wells had written War of the Worlds. Daphne du Maurier's grandfather had written a book called The Martian. Percival Lowell, whose brother was the president of Harvard University, had a huge telescope in Phoenix, Arizona, and he was looking at the canals of Mars, and they were obviously built by the Martians. They were irrigating the entire planet. So there was a lot of belief in life on Mars. But later, when Marconi succeeded in sending electricity, a wireless impulse across the Atlantic Ocean, he sent Morse code, the letter S, which is beep, beep, beep. I hypothesized maybe Tesla actually picked up Marconi's signals rather than the Martian signals. Oh. But that put Tesla into the occult. And as I said, I got my books, what I was getting those days in the 1970s, was from a UFO organization.
Yeah.
So Tesla had been moved into the occult, and that helped drive his name even further into the depths.
Which is really odd, since he had brought so much to the earth. He invented so much. He's so brilliant. But I mean, this is kind of how we treat people sometimes, isn't it? Where, if someone has more power to be more dominant, they can kind of brush other people off to the side. It wasn't Tesla. Didn't he die pretty much penniless?
He wasn't penniless. What happened was Tesla, he's a controversial guy. I mean, he's a complex personality. He never, he stopped paying rent at the Waldorf Astoria. He was very good friends with John Jacob Astor, who owned the Waldorf Astoria. And Astor was, in today's money, he was a billionaire. He's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He's the largest landowner in New York City. And Astor had given Tesla $100,000 or thereabouts to go out to Colorado Springs and do his various experiments. So I think Tesla just stopped paying rent. I don't think Astor really cared. But then Astor died in the Titanic. And when Bolt took over, George Bolt, he demanded payment of the rent. And it added up to almost $20,000. So Tesla transferred his great tower, Wardenclyffe Tower, to the Waldorf Astoria, to cover the money that he owed. And then he was bounced around to different hotels. He was in the Hotel St. Regis, Hotel Pennsylvania, Hotel Governor Clinton, and he never paid his rent in any of these places. And I think partly it was a personality flaw, but there was another part to it, and that is that his inventions created the modern era. He is the inventor of the hydroelectric power system. He's the inventor of wireless communication. So in an odd kind of way, I don't agree with this philosophy of his, but I think he felt, that I don't owe you guys, you owe me. If it wasn't for me, you wouldn't have elevators, you wouldn't have your lights. So he stopped paying his rent. Hugo Gernsback, the Hugo Award is named after him. He's the father of science fiction. If you just Google amazing stories or amazing wonder stories, you'll see these incredible covers from the 1930s. And he and Tesla went into the Westinghouse Company in the 1930s. And Tesla said it was Henry Westinghouse, because George had died at this point. Basically, he said, look, I gave you the hydroelectric power system. I offered to you my wireless communication. Now you have the Westinghouse Broadcasting Company, and you're paying Marconi's companies instead of me. So basically, he shamed the Westinghouse Company into covering his rent at the Hotel New Yorker. So he got 2 rooms at the Hotel New Yorker, rent-free for the rest of his life, from about 1934 until he died in 1943. And he still had patents. He still had money coming in Yugoslavia, where he came from, was paying him a pension. So he really was not penniless.
Well, that's good. I mean, what is, find it here, what is the Wardenclyffe Tower? What is that exactly?
What Tesla was doing was he had wireless telephone. He's the inventor of the wireless telephone, and I'll explain exactly what he did. Yeah. He invented a remote control robotic boat in 1898, and it had 2 aerials. And the reason why it had 2 aerials was 2 separate frequencies, because in those days, this was during the Spanish-American War. If you sent a torpedo out, suppose the enemy interfered with that, it could make the torpedo turn around and then bomb your own ship. So he wanted selective tuning, which is what we're on this particular radio station, AM 950. So AM 970 and AM 2000, whatever, there's all these different frequencies.
Yeah.
So let's say there's only 10 frequencies that exist in the planet. That would mean you could only have 10 wireless telephones. If you multiply the frequencies, you'd have 10 times 10. So if you use 2 frequencies, you'd have 100 telephones. And if you use 3 frequencies, you'd have 1,000 telephones. Tesla is the guy who discovered not only the frequencies used in wireless communication, but also the way to multiply frequencies. That's why every single person literally on this planet, almost every single person on this planet, has their own cell phone. And the reason is exactly what I just explained to you.
Would we be further along in technology and energy if we, back in the day, paid better attention to what Tesla was doing?
Yes, Tesla built this huge tower out on Long Island, and he sunk his own ship, quite frankly. He got $150,000 from Morgan. I don't know what $150,000 in 1901 is worth, but say 15 million. I mean, it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And he found out that Marconi was pirating his apparatus when he had offered Marconi through Sir William Preece his apparatus, and Marconi said, "I don't need it." And then Marconi wrote an article saying, you use a Tesla coil to send wireless information. And Tesla said, "Wait a minute, I offered it to you." So he doubled the size of the tower while Morgan was in Europe. So instead of building a 90-foot tower, he built a 180-foot tower. And his rationale was, if I double the size of the tower, I will not only send wireless information to Europe, but I'll also be able to send it to South America, to Australia, to China, so that the revenues won't be double, it'll be 6, 7, 8 times. So even though it'll cost twice as much, the revenues will be a lot greater. Morgan saw it as a breach of contract. And so Morgan stopped. He gave him the full 150,000, but Tesla needed more money. And the real sadness to this story is that Morgan didn't just back off. Morgan blocked Tesla from getting money from Jacob Schiff, from Thomas Fortune Ryan, from Henry Clay Frick. These people were zillionaires. In the case of Frick, Tesla was living in the world of Astoria. Frick was living in the world of Astoria. When U.S. Steel was created, Carnegie got something like $320 million in 1901. Frick got $60 million. And Frick was friends with Tesla. So for Frick to give Tesla another $150,000 or $200,000 was pocket change for this guy.
Yep.
And so he met with Morgan, and the deal did not go through. And this happened with all these billionaires in those days. So the robber barons. So that's the sad part of the story. Morgan didn't just back off. Morgan blocked Tesla from succeeding. And, to figure out why there's so many possible reasons, I think one reason was that Tesla breached his contract, and Morgan was afraid that maybe he was untrustworthy, even though Tesla had given him the hydroelectric power system. GE was making a ton of money on the hydroelectric power system because they had to deal with the Westinghouse company eventually. But also Tesla threatened with wireless. Morgan had copper mines out west. He had lumber yards in Alaska. He had rubber plantations in Africa, and shipping. You have to ship it all. So a wireless system threatened a system made of wires. So Tesla was threatening 3 or 4 industries of Morgan. So I think there was a combination of reasons why Morgan stopped funding him. But he didn't just stop funding him. He blocked him from succeeding. So that's the sad part of the story.
It's very sad, and I just remember this. You'll have to stick with me on this one. Watching an episode of the late 1950s Dennis the Menace, and there was an episode where the Wilsons had a remote control for their television, wireless. And I remember seeing this in the 80s when we got a remote control television. That was a big deal in the 1980s. For us to have, thinking I had no idea that it went that far back in time, let alone the fact that Tesla was doing it in 1898, 1899, starting with a boat. Who knows where we would have been at now, just with that technology alone.
I think about the Holocaust. Had a wireless system advanced in 1901, 1902 under Tesla's administration, he was telling Morgan, I know I double the size of the tower, but I'm gonna advance the world a century. You and I are sitting across from each other. It will be like you'll be talking to a guy in Australia, like you're sitting in the same room. You and I right now, you're in Minnesota, I'm in Rhode Island. We're literally sitting in the same room together. We feel like that right now. And that's what Tesla was pleading with Morgan. So I think had he succeeded, we would have had cell phone technology in the 1915s, the 1920s. And I think had that happened, it would have been a lot harder to hide the horrors of what happened during the Holocaust. Well, people didn't know. They didn't believe that such a terrible thing happened. And one of the reasons was because wireless was still so new.
That's a really interesting point. And I think that's something that also I think people forget about, and not to get too much on a tangent here, but you're right. What we're viewing when it comes to world history is that it's history. We have access to a whole lot of things, but at that time, horrors like that, people didn't know. People didn't know the full extent, if anything at all. I think that, and with with that technology would have changed anything. And I think what also is very frustrating about that, and I mean, you just got done saying all this, is the fact that people were stopping it because it would affect their bottom line. It would affect their profit margin, opposed to doing something that would benefit humanity or benefit, you know, just the cause and the progress of electricity. It's very sad. It's actually a very sad story.
Yeah, there's another irony here too. Look at all the millionaires, multimillionaires that have been created through wireless communication. I mean, you now have a lineman in a football team who's making $60 million. And the reason he's making $60 million is advertising on television. So Tesla knew that he didn't know exactly what would happen, but it was a whole new paradigm. And Morgan was unable to see that he actually would have probably benefited more had he backed Tesla and given up the wires for a wireless system.
You know, and there had to have been a lot of people that were close around, you know, Tesla's group, that whether or not they were supporting him or not, that had to also still been a bit of a leap for them to believe that anything could just just signals go through the air like that, opposed to a wire. I mean, because I think that is sci-fi in a sense. You know, I don't know if there was any sort of, you know, deep learning curve with that as well.
Kids today don't remember or realize that television was only wireless. It wasn't, you know, we had aerials on our houses.
Yeah.
You know, when you tell a kid today who's in his 20s or 30s that television was all wireless, their eyes light up because they didn't think so. In fact, when I was getting my master's degree in 1970s at University of Chicago, I had a friend who was involved with cable TV, and I thought, what an idiot! Who the heck is going to pay for TV and attach it to a wire when it's wireless? And of course, he made out like a bandit, and I was completely wrong. That wireless television, you know, was a bandit.
Yeah, no, I got it. And that was great when that all came around. Yeah, no, it just what a fascinating thing. Mark, I want to take another break here. When we get back, I want to talk about things like death rays and stuff like that, and just kind of talk about more about any kind of FBI involvement and stuff around Tesla as well after he passed. Everyone, don't go away. You are listening to GhostBox Radio on AM 950. Greg Bakun here. I've told you about the out-of-the-world roast beef sandwiches at Maverick's Real Roast Beef, but I haven't told you about their Philly steak sandwiches, turkey bacon avocado sandwich, BLT, crispy chicken, fish sandwiches, brisket, or pulled pork. Okay, you get the idea. They make a lot of delicious food to the same standard as their famous roast beef sandwiches, and now I'm starving. I'm going to go to Maverick's Real Roast Beef off Lexington and Roseville, and you need to go too. Check out their menu at mavericksbeef.com. Have you ever met someone who not only can help you on a deep spiritual level, but also potentially change your life? Refined Divine is an extremely gifted psychic medium who travels the nation and lives right here in the Midwest. And she offers mediumship, mentorship, house and business parties, energy healing, palm readings, and so much more. Refined Divine has helped thousands, and she can help you.
Hi, this is Psychic Medium Deb. I cannot wait to hear from you. You can go to refineddivinepsychic.com.
Greg Bakun here. I love historic tours of Minneapolis and seeing everything it has to offer. But if you know me, I like to include a little spooky in my tours, which is why I found the perfect combination. Minneapolis Trolley Tours does this amazing candlelight ghost tour that you have to check out. It's an extremely immersive experience. It's a trolley trip that starts out at a haunted mansion, traveling around Minneapolis locations exposing ghost stories that the public and business owners would rather left untold. Then a tour of the aforementioned haunted mansion where ghosts of past residents from the 1800s reside, plus a lot of surprises to discover. Next, experience Gertrude's After Hours. Did I mention Gertrude is the mansion's most famous ghost? Maybe she'll show up. And you finish up the tour at Gertrude's Lounge in the haunted basement of the mansion with refreshments and Q&A. The trolleys are climate controlled and the mansion is restored to perfection. Check out MinneapolisTrolleyTours.com for more information. And join me tomorrow on GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun. We are going to be doing a replay. Tomorrow is the anniversary of September 11th. And I did an interview with Joseph Lanny on the 20th anniversary of September 11th back in 2021. And he was a cop that wasn't actually on site of the World Trade Center towers, but he was where they dropped off all the debris. And he talks about not only the spirits and the ghostly things that he had seen at this location, but he actually ended up getting a heart attack there. And once he had that heart attack, his gifts erupted and he became a medium. And we talk about that. We talk about his duty. We also talk about his role in talking to spirits from September 11th. Please know that this is a very serious conversation, and it's one of my favorites. Please check that out tomorrow. We have on with us tonight author Marc J Seifer. We are talking about kind of roughly about his book, Wizard, The Life and Times of Nikola Tesla. We've kind of been going all over the place, but the book is available on Amazon. Please consider picking it up. You can also go to a local bookstore and order it there. Keep them in business. Or I have it on my site, GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun, GhostBox Book Club. If you get it through us, it's an Amazon affiliation. It just helps the show. And we're having this conversation. Mark, I was curious. I mean, one of the things that Nikola had created is a death ray that could take stuff out of the sky. What is this?
Well, what happened was we were making the television show, The Tesla Files.
Yeah.
I had to come up with new information. And for many years, I mean, in the 1990s, I had something called the Trump Report. This was a teacher from MIT. After Tesla died, he studied Tesla's effects, and he talked about the particle beam weapon, Tesla's secret death ray. When we were making the television show in 2017, I found out that he was Donald Trump's uncle. Now, I grew up in New York, so I certainly knew who Donald Trump was. But this guy was a professor at MIT. I just thought they had the same last name. I never connected the two at all. But I had to come up with new information. So what I looked at was the letterhead of John G. Trump's letterhead. He was in the National Defense Research Council. The head of the National Defense Research Council was Vannevar Bush. If you've seen the movie Oppenheimer, the Matthew Modine character is Vannevar Bush.
Yeah.
He is the head of the Manhattan Project, and he's the head of secret weapons development for the U.S. government, working directly for Franklin Roosevelt during World War II. I knew that Tesla was connected to the British War Office, trying to sell his particle beam weapon to the British as well. And I got a whole stack of papers from the Tesla Museum in Belgrade. And in that stack was a mention of General Andrew McNaughton, and on went to talk about Tesla trying to sell it to the British. So after going through all, I said to myself, well, who's this Andrew McNaughton? I said, do you have any letters from Andrew McNaughton? Oh, yeah, we got them. So I get this whole stack of letters from a guy I never heard of. He was the head of secret weapons development for the Canadian government. And if you Google his name, you'll see him sitting next to Winston Churchill. He was third in line to be head of Allied forces after Eisenhower and Mountbatten. He was a big deal.
Yeah. And
Tesla was negotiating directly with Andrew McNaughton. So what I learned, and when you mentioned that Tesla was, penniless later in life, he wasn't penniless. And in fact, what's so interesting about it, and it's in my new book, it's called Tesla, Wizard at War. I get into this at great detail. Tesla was negotiating with the very heights of all the allies. I got declassified letters from the Soviet Union, which showed that Tesla was negotiating with Joseph Stalin and sold some of the ideas for the particle beam weapon to Stalin before Stalin started murdering everybody. It was in 1934. He did the horrible stuff about 2 years later. He was negotiating with Andrew McNaughton, who was the third in line to head Allied forces, the head of secret weapons development for the British Empire, basically, flying in on a regular basis to meet with Vannevar Bush and President Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt. and he was negotiating with Roosevelt's people. I interviewed Ralph Bergstresser, who sat on Tesla's particle beam weapon for 40 years. He was probably the last person to see Tesla alive. Tesla was trying to sell the weapon because that's what he did for a living to all these people. But once we went into the war, he donated the secrets to the particle beam weapon to the U.S. government through Ralph Bergstresser. And Bergstresser obviously handed it over to military intelligence, but also kept a copy for himself. And in 1984, when I spoke at the first International Tesla Conference in Colorado Springs, Andrija Puharich was there. Puharich was the guy who brought Uri Geller to the world. And Puharich had the secret weapon paper. And that was astounding because we'd all been looking for it. And there it was. So my new book, Tesla Wizard at War, I go into all that discussion. So what is the particle beam weapon? What Tesla realized, if you take a flashlight and you aim it out, it loses all of its power because it spreads out. It's the same thing with an electric ray. So the idea of a death ray, it loses all of its power after it goes for 10 or 15 feet out. So he had to figure out a way to send it like a laser beam, a very thin beam. And this is Tesla's brilliance. He came up with the idea of a particle beam weapon. And so what it was he used the power of repulsion. And I go all the way back to when he was a kid. He had a pop gun. You pump the gun and out pops a cork. And he used to shoot crows with this thing. And there was a string attached to the cork so you wouldn't lose the cork. That's the same exact idea. It's repulsion. So he creates an electrical belt of repulsion, electrical, ions. And let's say they're negatively charged. And if you have little tiny pieces of tungsten, almost microscopic in size, and they're also negatively charged, they will shoot out the cannon of this thing at 300 miles a second, and you can drill a hole in an airplane. That's what his death ray was. And what I also discovered was that in 1915, when they were getting ready to tear down Wardenclyffe, the tower, he wanted to save it. It was during World War I. He announces to the world that he has a death ray. And so he already invented this thing in 1915. But in the 1930s, he sold it to the Soviet Union, probably got $25,000. Now, during the height of the Great Depression, that's, I don't know, a couple $100,000 at least, maybe more than that. And we don't know for sure. I wasn't able to establish whether he actually sold it to the British, but there were many letters. I got all the letters, all the negotiations, and he definitely gave it to the U.S. government. And so I track the history of it. Today, the Iron Dome that Israel has is based on that concept, but the railgun uses the power of repulsion, is an outcropping of Tesla's invention of the particle beam weapon.
But no one had used it, right?
No, and I don't think anyone has ever actually totally developed his specific invention of the particle beam weapon. But he also felt it was a way to send energy to other planets. So there's a lot to this weapon. It's not just a weapon. There's a whole other level of understanding behind it all. But the railgun is based on the same principle. So instead of shooting out a giant cannon, dynamite and all that stuff, you use electrical repulsion, which is definitely an outcropping of this invention.
No, and it comes to mind, and I know that these are not connected, but in my mind, it's just like you makes me wonder: is had he lived and lived longer, do you think he would have had a hand in any sort of rocket propulsion?
I think he would have developed this, and I think he would have. His idea was to not just use it as a weapon, but also to send energy to the moon. Elon Musk talks about going to Mars. You got to go to the moon first. I mean, it's crazy not to go to the moon first. And how would we, create energy on the moon? So it's possible that this system might be a way to transmit energy that way. I wanted to mention one other invention that he invented, and that's the Osprey helicopter airplane. If you, it takes off like a helicopter and then rotates into the airplane position. If you Google that, Bell Labs developed it. You won't see Tesla's name. And the only reason I know that he's the inventor is he actually patented it. So the corporations hid a lot of Tesla's work in a number of areas, and that's one key area. One of the heads of Bell Labs at the time was dismissive of Tesla because he was seen to be kind of a little bit nutty. He talked about interplanetary communication and things like that. Meanwhile, Bell Labs, developed one of the most important airplanes that the military has today.
It's incredible. Absolutely. It just feels like that there are so many, you talked about, people blocking him from success, but I mean, it's not one person. It seems like there's so many separate parties that are kind of blocking him in almost every avenue. It's just incredible.
Yeah, fluorescent lights was held back for 40 years. He invented fluorescent lights, wireless lights. He said, why make a light that produces heat? You remember when you used to burn your fingers when you changed the light bulb? Just make a light that produces light. He had that in the 1890s. They held it back because they wanted built-in obsolescence. Your light bulb would last 4 or 5 months and you have to get a new one. But the demand for lighting was so important that in the 1940s they just simply came out with the fluorescent lights in all factories and warehouses and office buildings were now using fluorescent lighting because they just couldn't afford to just use the Edison bulb anymore. So that was one clear example where it was kept underneath the surface for money reasons.
Was because I had read that the U.S. government Office of Alien Property seized all of Tesla's documents and effects. Is that true?
Yeah, what happened was Tesla's nephew, Sava Kazanovic, was the ambassador from Yugoslavia, and he was an alien, and he was, involved in a communist country. Tito was the prime minister or the president of Yugoslavia at the time, and this was during World War II. And Tesla had all these secret weapons and all these secret things. They didn't want to give up the papers, so the Office of Alien Property, aliens in the sense that they came from a foreign country. So they kept Tesla's papers and effects, all the trunks, 50, 60 trunks of all of his stuff for almost 10 years. And then eventually they released it to Kazanovic in the early 1950s, and they built the Tesla Museum in Belgrade. In fact, when we shot the Tesla files, we flew over to Belgrade and we spent some time there, talking with all the effects there. And these 200,000 letters from Mark Twain, from J.P. Morgan, Stanford White, all these very famous people, that he dealt with. William Randolph Hearst, I discussed that. He was friends with him too. And, it's many famous people.
It's incredible. Do you think that there is stuff that Tesla had created that we don't know about, that maybe the government has taken, or do you think because he is so diligent with filing the papers to show ownership that's not possible?
No, I'm working right now on this idea of cosmic rays. If you study cosmic rays, they're unbelievable. They're coming from other galaxies. They have tremendous energy. He felt there was a way to harness cosmic rays. I'm also in the back of Tesla Wizard at War. I solved Einstein's dream of grand unification, of combining Tesla's dynamic theory of gravity with electromagnetism. So I think that there's a lot more still to be learned from Tesla. That's why I've been studying him all these years. I do many other things. He's not the only thing in my life, but I keep learning from him. He's so insightful and so many different areas. But I think his interest in cosmic rays and as I said, in the back of Tesla Wizard at War, I solved something that Einstein spent 40 years trying to do, and that was how to combine gravity with electromagnetism. And I do that in that book. And I think the reason I do it is because of Tesla. Just quickly, basically, part of it has to do with redefining what gravity is. I always thought, gravity was you're attracted to the Earth. But what Tesla's saying is that all matter absorbs energy all the time. And so the reason why we fall back to the Earth when we jump up is not because we're attracted to the Earth, but because the Earth is sucking in a tremendous amount of energy all the time. All matter is absorbing energy all the time. That's the ether. Einstein didn't do away with the ether, but when he came up with the photon theory, the particles, the light particles, the ether kind of disappeared. They said it was empty space. It's not empty space. Just look at a picture of a galaxy. It's floating in something. That's the ether. So you have to resurrect the ether and redefine gravity as ether absorption. And there's a few other aspects to it where I was able to solve something that Einstein spent 40 years never able to achieve.
Well, that's something to say, isn't it? That you were able to solve something that Einstein couldn't. I mean, I'm going to say I'm impressed, Mark. I just,
I'm impressed. I'll tell you the truth. I mean, I'm very happy with myself, but it's in the second book, Tesla, Wizard at War. Wizard, Life and Times of Nikola Tesla is a detailed analysis of his life. It's got 1,000 endnotes. I know Tesla's life better than I know my own life, honestly and truly. I know what he did give me one more second. I know what he did in 1892, 1893, 1894, etc. I don't know what I did in 1992, 1993, 1994. I literally know his life better than I know my own.
Well, and you're a champion. You're a champion for him, and that seemed to be seeded back in the 70s when you first read of him coming from Venus in 1856, and it's incredible. I mean, not 1856, whatever it is.
Yeah, it's the same age as Freud.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. No, that's fantastic. The second book that we hadn't brought up, Tesla, Wizard at War, The Genius, The Particle Beam Weapon, and The Pursuit of Power, also available on Amazon, written by Marc J Seifer. And folks, when you go to Amazon, if you go buy your books from Amazon, just click on Mark's name and you're going to see a plethora of books. So enjoy. That's all I'm going to say. Mark, as we're wrapping up here, because we need to head on out, I just want to say thank you so much. This was a fantastic conversation.
I enjoyed this so much, and it's literally like we're sitting in the same room together, which was Tesla's vision in 1901.
Isn't that cool? It only took 100 and some years to get there, but we're there. Absolutely. Folks, don't forget to check out more of Marc Seifer's books. And tomorrow we're going to talk about 9/11. Everyone, have a fantastic night.